Good afternoon. I wanted to start by saying thank you to Katie Damien and Angry Unicorn Entertainment for this PSA that we just watched. It's short and it's very powerful. So just take a minute for it to settle in. The story behind it is also very complex, all the work that Homeward Bound does every day. My name is Cindy McMahon, and I am the long-term interim executive director of Homeward Bound. Not forever, but for a while I'm needed. And I'm honored to be here to be able to provide a few highlights of what has been going on in this complex work, the story behind the story there. I'm going to put on my glasses and check my notes just to make sure that I don't miss anything. But also, before I go into the highlights, I wanted to thank Steve Agnew and Rock Creek Productions, who jumped in at the last minute, a good friend of mine, to help record this event so that we can share it with others in the future. So thanks to Steve. So, given the state of Homeward Bound and all that we've been up to over the last year, it has been so many new beginnings we are building with this organization. Starting with the programs. Of course, that's the heart of why we're here. During calendar year 2021, we partnered with more than 75 private landlords and coordinated 94 leases to provide stable housing for formerly homeless members of our community. We prevented homelessness for 27 individuals, including 8 veterans, ended homelessness for 117 people, 81 of whom were chronically homeless and 37 were veterans. During the height of the pandemic, Homeward Bound stepped up to run shelter programs at local hotels in partnership with the city of Asheville. At the end of June last year, we closed the Red Roof Inn program after sheltering 166 individuals for more than a year to keep them safe from the pandemic. Only one of those clients contracted COVID, and 42 moved into permanent housing. In October, we wound down several hotel shelters for veterans that we ran during the pandemic. Of this veterans group, we sheltered close to 120 individuals and families and moved 74 into permanent homes. In February of this year, Homeward Bound invested in additional off-hours security at A-Hope, and in March, we hired our new Homeless Services Director, Marcus Laws. Marcus has brought a new sense of calm and vision to A-Hope and the outreach team, and a new level of engagement opportunities for community members experiencing homelessness who come to A-Hope for services and an opportunity to access permanent housing. We moved 26 people out of homelessness just last month. We don't typically do that on the weekends, so that's more than one a day. This happened through the hard work of our case managers and Welcome Home Donation Center. Folks were moved into fully furnished housing with gently used items donated by you, our community. And with so many move-ins, we need more of those items. So if you have furniture or linens or kitchen items, please bring them to our Welcome Home Donation Center. We're running a little bit low with all of these move-ins. We also need supplies for folks at A-Hope. So if you have socks or towels or shampoo in big bottles or little bottles, we'll decant it into little bottles if needed, but we need all of those items. So we appreciate the extent to which our community wraps around these programs. At Homeward Bound, we are definitely accomplishing our mission of preventing and ending homelessness through permanent housing and support. With your help over the years, Homeward Bound has moved 23 men, women, and children into permanent housing, and 92% of them have never experienced homelessness again. As we heard earlier, though, this work is still ongoing. Last night at the City Council meeting, the results of the point-in-time count were announced, and as Kelly said, 637 people were identified as homeless in this year's point-in-time count. That's doubling the number of unsheltered people from last year. So there is much more work yet to be done. In addition to the program work, Of course, we have to keep all that going with grants and fundraising, so it's been a busy year with that too. September was the start of the quiet phase for the capital campaign. You'll hear more about this later. It's just been so much. The Giving Tuesday in November raised $22,000, paying for 2 people to move from homelessness into housing and receive supportive services for a year each. In March, the Open Your Heart for Women in Homelessness Luncheon raised $17,000 for Key Commons and AHOPE. We raised money for mothers and their children who are homeless, the fastest growing homeless population, as well as the renovation of the final apartment at Key Commons. Key Commons is Homeward Bound's first endeavor into ownership of permanent supportive housing and has helped pave the way for 201 Tunnel Road, the former Days Inn. In August, we closed on 201 Tunnel Road, also known as Home is Key, thanks to a $2 million investment each from Dogwood Health Trust, the City of Asheville, and Buncombe County, and also $500,000 from an anonymous donor. Home is key to health, safety, healing, and hope. We selected Beverly Grant as our contractor in February, and I think we have some folks from Beverly Grant here today. And demolition began shortly thereafter to renovate this building to become 85 units of permanent housing for those who have been chronically homeless. Buncombe County awarded $1 million for the renovation, and we learned just last night, again at that important council meeting, that we will receive an additional $999,900. It's hard to say that number, but it's $100 short of $1 million in American Rescue Plan funds from the City of Asheville to support this renovation. So thank you very much to the city. We have folks from the city here too. Our amazing staff are the heart of this work. And so I too would like to recognize the staff, and all of you do. You've already gotten to stand up for us, so I won't make you stand up again, but just so much gratitude from me for the work that you do every day with folks who are experiencing trauma. 2 new efforts that we've done for our staff in this year have been a week of rest and reset in January, which was a new effort to help people take a pause and really come back with a fresh start in the beginning of the year. And then a couple of weeks ago, we were able to offer Reconnect for Resilience training to all of our staff, which is a very impactful 2-day training. And I think that too will help us move from trauma to resilience in our work. It has been powerful for me. It's been a powerful opportunity to lead this organization for the last 8 months. There have been many, many new beginnings, and we all have a story to tell. So I've told a little bit of the story of the work of Homeward Bound, but I'd like to share a little bit more just personally about what brings me to this work and why it matters to me. You see here that I actually wrote a book about my family. Wrote this story a number of years ago, and it was published in 2015. The title, Fresh Water from Old Wells, is the title of the sermon that my grandfather wrote on, or delivered on the day I was born. I didn't mean for it to be up there the whole time I was talking, so hopefully you've been looking at me and not at that. But I did just want to share that we have this story, and my story relates back to the mission of Homeward Bound, and it's part of what brings me here. So can you take us to the next one? So I have 3 sisters, and I was born at Koinonia Farm in South Georgia, which is also the birthplace of Habitat for Humanity. My dad's involvement with the civil rights movement, in addition to his own childhood trauma, brought his mental illness roaring to the surface early in my life. The person I grew up with as a dad was different than the dad my much older sisters remembered, the person that you see here. When I was a toddler, my dad left us for the first time. We were living at that point in Cabbagetown, which is a slum in Atlanta, especially was then. It's been quite rejuvenated since then, but back then, I remember a lot of roaches in Cabbagetown, and we were living there, and my dad left us unexpectedly. We didn't know where he went. It was Christmas time, and he went to just go to Chicago and sleep under a bush, and that was the first time. When I was about 6 years old, about the time of this picture, actually, that's me, he disappeared for an entire summer. And again, we didn't know where he was, and that was the beginning of a pattern of him being gone for long periods of time Usually he would be either hitchhiking back and forth across the country, or he would be sleeping in a tent, sometimes in someone's backyard, sometimes in a swamp, sometimes on the beach. Often he lived in Virginia Beach, and I remember when I was a kid, one time visiting him there and sleeping on the beach under a catamaran, both of us in our 2 sleeping bags side by side, so I could get a sense of what his life was like. This is the dad that I grew up with as a dad, the same man that you saw 2 slides earlier, and I loved him very much. He didn't come home that often, and when he did, sometimes, again, his mental illness would come roaring to the surface, and sometimes he was violent, and we had a very complicated relationship. But I loved him deeply. And it's because of having him in my life that this work means so much to me, and that I continue to show up every day as long as I'm needed, and will continue to show up every day as long as I'm needed. I understand the power of this work, and I understand the power of resilience, because that's why I'm standing here. And I understand how powerful it can be when we can find home and stability in our lives. Moving on from that, from what brings me here, what brings me to this podium right now is to introduce my new friend, Lori Teresa Yearwood. I'm so grateful to have her here. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. There she is. She's here to share her powerful story of trauma and resilience. Lori has traveled all the way from Utah to be here with us today, and I had the real gift of being able to pick her up from her hotel and spend a little bit of time getting to know her on the way here this morning. As you've read, she's a national housing crisis reporter with an economic hardship reporting project. Her work has appeared in many prominent publications, and she's a 2022 Poynter Fellow at Yale. In the South, I guess we might say Poynter Feller, but I don't think that's what they say at Yale. After what I've already read of her writing, I'm really excited to read her memoir when it comes out. And I'll just say also that another important thing that I learned on the way from the hotel to here is that there's a lot of horse in Lori. She really resonates with horses, and as she is writing her story of trauma and resilience, she's spending time with horses and learning the healing that can come through that process as well. So please join me in welcoming my new friend, Lori Teresa Yearwood.